Kal Kadosh, Boker Or, Masechet, Bava Metzia Daf, Kaftet Amud Aleph 29a1. We just finished by mentioning the machloket between Rabbi Tarfon and Rabbi Akiva. We just said that the machloket between Tarfon and Rabbi Akiva is you came and you sold the animal. The animal was going to cost you too expensive, so therefore you went and you sold it, and you have the money. What do you do with the money? Rabbi Tarfon says you're allowed to use the money, but then you're obligated in any guarantee that anything that happens to it, you're obligated. According to Rabbi Akiva, you're not allowed to use it. Says the Gemara, but that's only if you used it. If you did not use the money, according to everybody, you're going to be patur, right, if something happens to it. Says the Gemara, Leimati have it yuvta de Rav Yosef. Why don't I just say that this is going to be a question against Rav Yosef? De itma, that it was stated, Shomer Aveda, to do with the Shomer Aveda. Rabba Amar, Rabba comes and he says, Ke Shomer Chinam. Rabba says that you're considered a Shomer Chinam. Rav Yosef Amar, Rav Yosef comes and he says it's a Shomer Sachar. So therefore, what's going on? Now, basically, the concept is, why are you going to be Shomer Chinam, Shomer Sachar? According to the first Shita that he says you're Shomer Aveda, you're the Shomer Chinam, you didn't do anything. You're not getting any money from it. So since you're not getting any money, so therefore you're going to be chayav only on negligence, but you're going to be patur on gneva v'avida. If it gets lost or stolen, you're going to be exempt. Rav Yosef says you're still considered like a shomer sachar. Why? Because when you're watching over your an avida, it's a mitzvah, and Aosef b'mitzvah patur min mitzvah. So therefore, the fact that right now you're going to be patur from giving, for example, let's say tzedakah, or let's say, so that in itself is considered that you're getting paid, and therefore you're obligated. So Elmaleh Rav Yosef is going to answer you. According to everybody, you're going to be chayav, right, by aveda and gneva. Ki pligi, when is the machloket? Be'onsin de shoel, by an ones of a shoel. Rabbi Tarfon Omer, remember that a shoel is chayav be'onsin. Shoel is a borrower. He's chayav in onsin, in anything which is force majeure. Rabbi Tarfon savar sharu leRabbanan lishlemusha begavayu. The rabbis came and permitted you to actually come and to use it. Okay, and therefore you're going to be considered like a borrower, that you're chayav be'onsin. Rabbi Akiva holds that you're not going to be permitted to use it. All right, and therefore you're not going to be considered a shoel. So says the Gemara, ihachi, if so, lefichach de amar Rabbi Akiva lamali. Why does it say lefichach? It doesn't make sense. One more time. In our Mishnah, we thought it was the exact opposite. Rabbi Tarfon was more lenient, because he said that you're allowed to use it. And therefore, since you're allowed to use it, you're going to be chayav to pay, whether it's gneva v'aveda. You're going to be chayav achriyutan, which means you're obligated in the guarantee. Rabbi Akiva said you're not allowed to use it. And since you're not allowed to use it, lefichach, therefore, you're going to be exempt. Why are you going to be exempt? Right? He comes and he says, if you're not going to be chayav, if you're not going to be a shoel, why in the world are you not going to be chayav in the onsin? What is a lefichach? Then lefichach doesn't make sense in the words of Rabbi Akiva. So says the Gemara, if you're going to tell me that the entire machloka between them is by gneva v'aveda, that's why Rabbi Akiva said, lo yishtamesh b'en, you're not allowed to use it, and therefore lefichach, if it gets lost, you're not going to be chayav in achriyutan. I would have thought to say shomer sachar havi, that you're going to be considered like a shomer sachar like Rav Yosef, ugneva v'aveda mechayev, and you're going to be chayav gneva v'aveda, because you're like a shomer sachar in the fact that you're patur from doing other mitzvot of giving tzedakah v'chule. Kamashmalan comes teach you lefichach, that if it gets lost, you're not going to be chayav. V'hashta damarta, but now that you told me now that you can't use it at all, so you're not shomer sachar, ve'lo mechayev gneva v'aveda, you're not going to be chayav in gneva v'aveda. Elai amarta, but now if you're going to tell me gneva v'aveda, according to everybody, you're going to be chayav. And when is the machloket only announcing the shoel? So what is the lefichach of Rabbi Akiva? So answers the Gemara, this is what Rabbi Akiva went in to say. Hachi mibai lemitna, this is the way that you should have taught the Mishnah. Rabbi Akiva says you're not allowed to use it. And he doesn't say the word lefichach, right? Meaning, lo yishtamesh b'en, you're not allowed to use the money. So exact opposite of what we were saying beforehand, right? Meaning, you're not allowed to use it. Rabbi Akiva did say in the Mishnah, you're not allowed to use it. But then he said lefichach, and therefore, that's why you're not going to be chayav achriyutan. Take out those words lefichach. So therefore, you're not allowed to use it. Now he says, v'ana yadana, now I know that given the lo yishtamesh b'en, since you're not going to use it, lav shoel have, you're not a shoel. And therefore, you're not going to be chayav achriyutan. So lefichach Rabbi Akiva, so why do I need the lefichach? So he says mishum lefichach Rabbi Tarfon, meaning it was derech agav the lefichach Rabbi Tarfon. Rabbi Tarfon said a lefichach beforehand, correct? So therefore, since he went and he said lefichach beforehand, so therefore also Rabbi Akiva said lefichach. But it wasn't that he said the lefichach, right? It's a kilu that since we use the same terminology by Rabbi Tarfon, derech agav we also use the Rabbi Akiva, but it's not that you actually had to use it. So ask the Gemara, Lefichach the bitafon. Why do we need lefichach of the bitafon? So haki kama. This is what we're going to say. Since the rabbis permitted you to use the money, so it's like ki'ilu you already used it, right? That means even though you didn't use it, it's ki'ilu you used it. The fact that you could have used it, and therefore chayav achriutan, you're going to be obligated if something happens to it. So ask the Gemara, v'havdu ktani. It says that if it gets lost, you're chayav achriutan. So therefore, we're not talking about ones, we're talking gneva v'aveda. One more time, the Mishnah says if it gets lost, you're chayav achriutan. Mashma with the machloket is aveda, gneva v'aveda. We're not talking about onsim. According to Ezekiel, we said no, gneva v'aveda. We're talking about gneva v'aveda is according to everybody you're going to be chayav. When is the machloket? Only be'onsim. That's what Rav Yosef said. So it's not true. In the Mishnah it said im avdu chayav achriutan. We're talking about gneva v'aveda. So answers the Gemara, Kaftet Amubet, Kederabba. Really, Be'emet Rav Yosef is going to explain Avdu like Rava. Rabba, what does Rabba say? Ta'amar Rabba says, Nignevu is a listim mezuyan. Avdu is tavas finato bayam. You remember when it says Nignevu, it means that it was stolen with a listim mezuyan, with armed robbery. And Avdu, when it means that it got lost, it means that the svina, the boat, sank in the sea. So that's also honest. So that means even though it said the word of avdu, which means gets lost, it didn't mean gets lost literally, you can't find it. It means that the boat sank, and once the boat sank, that's an honest. So therefore it makes sense, like Rav Yosef. So Rav Yosef is going to change the Mishnah, and he's going to tell you that this is the way that you're going to have it in the Mishnah. What's halacha? Amar Rav Shmuel halacha k'bitafon. Halacha is k'bitafon. That basically you're allowed to use the money, right? And then obviously if something happens, you're going to be chayav. In the hands of Rachva, he had money of Yitomim. So he came in front of Yosef, and he says, can I use this money or not? He told him, this is what Rav Shmuel says, which means you're allowed to use it. So Abaye says, but wasn't it stated? Remember, Abaye was a student of Rav Yosef, and Rav Yosef, towards the end of his life, he forgot his learning. So many times he used to come and he used to remind his Rebbe, right, about the halacha. So he told him, but didn't the Rebbe tell us that at the end of the day, we're talking about the money of Avedah? Since he was coming and he was doing tircha, so therefore he was allowed to use it. But if he found money, he's not allowed to use it. Meaning, when do we permit you to use it? If you came and you found an animal, you sold it, and now you have money. Because since you went through the hardship of selling the animal and now you have the money, so now we said, you know what? You went through all the headache, so now you could use the money. And then you have to give back the money to the guy when he comes back. But if you just found money, you didn't do anything. I found money. So now I did tircha. There's no tircha. You didn't do anything. So for there, you're not allowed to use it. Right? It was a ma'ot of adamu. So Elmaleh told him, Zil, go. Lo shavku lidashlecha. He says, go. They didn't permit me to let you use it. So you can't use it. Okay, and that's exactly what we just said until the Mishnah. Kal Kadosh, Mishnah on Kaftet Amud Bet, 29b Mishnah. The Mishnah says as follows. Matzah Sefarim. Right? Somebody that found Sefarim. So Korah behen echad l'shloshim yom. So therefore, if you found the Sefer, you're allowed to read it once every 30 days. Right? Basically, that by opening up the books, it takes away that it's not going to become, like rotten or bad. Because you open it up, you air it out, as they say in English. Right? And if you don't know how to read the books, Golan, stam, you roll it from one to another. Again, the same thing, just in order to air it out. But don't come and start learning it from the first time that they didn't learn. Right? Because then, you have to leave it for a long time. And then if you're going to learn from it, and it's mama, so then what's going to happen is it's going to get ruined. Yeah, nobody else should read with you as well, because then what happens is that each person pulls the sefer towards them, so it could actually tear the sefer. Matzah kesut, if you found the clothing, minara echad l'shoshim yom, right? So what are you supposed to do? Minara, you shake it out once every 30 days, right? V'shotcha, and you place it on the ground. Litzurka, for it, which means that again, we don't want. If you're going to keep clothing, many times it gets with how do you call it, humidity and how do you call this? It gets moldy, So you take it out. Avalo lichvodo, but you don't do it for his kavod in order to make that the house should look nicer. If you found utensils of silver or copper, mishtabesh ben litzorkan, again, you're allowed to use it for them, which means, again, right, that you don't want it to get ruined. Avalo l'shachakan, but not that you're to come and to do this, because then you're going to be mikalkel otam. Okay, kle zahav u kle zechuchit. When we're talking about kle zahav and kle zechuchit, yeah, he says lo yiga behem, don't touch it. Ad she'yavo Eliyahu. Why? Because since it doesn't get ruined, so therefore, right, until Eliyahu comes, do not touch it. Matzah sak o kupa v'chol davar she'en darko litol. Have you found a sackcloth or a kupa or anything which is not normal to come and to take? Yeah, areze lo yitol. So you don't have to take it whatsoever. Okay, because even if it belongs to him, right? So it's a bizayon for him to come and to start, taking it in the marketplace. So you don't have to take it back, but it's not as kavod to come and take it back. We're going to speak about exactly what exactly are we referring to. Okay, fine. Says the Gemara. Amar Shmuel. Shmuel says, "Hamotzet tefillin b'shuk." If you're going to find tefillin in the shuk, sham dmehen umenichen la'altar. Right? What do you do? Right? If you want them, what you do is you just evaluate them, and then you put it on, and that's it. Right? Why? Because since you know how much money does he have to pay for the tefillin that he found, he's allowed to take the tefillin for himself, and then he just pays for the tefillin. Okay? So, the guy that found it. One more time, the guy found it. He wants to use it. So what he does is he evaluates it. How much money is it worth? Boom. He starts putting it on, and then he has to give that money to the loser, to the guy that lost it. Loser, not the guy that lost it. Yeah? Fine. So Mativ Ravina comes and he asks the following question. Matzah Sfarim kore b'einech l'shoshim yom. We just said that if you find Sefarim, you're going to read it once every 30 days. V'im enu yodea likrot. And if you don't know how to read it, golelan, you're going to roll it in order to protect it. Golelan in sham demen manichal. No, but you could only roll it, but you can't actually use it. Meaning like this. What's the difference between Tefillin and Sefarim? Why is it that Sefarim, I'm not allowed to do that, and I just roll it just so that way it airs it out, but I'm not allowed to just put the money in and start learning it? And by tefillin, I'm allowed to do that. What's the difference? So Rabbi says tefillin, be bar chavu mishkach shchiche. Tefillin are mitzuyot, right, in the house of bar chavu, which is a guy that he used to like a sofer. And therefore, since he came and he lost them, right, when he's going to get the money, he could easily go and buy new tefillin. Sfarim lo shchiche. But sfarim are not common. So since sfarim are not going to be common, so therefore that's why it's going to be important, right, that the Sfarim, right, basically this. If you're going to put the money down and start using tefillin, Chazak Baruch, you give him the money, he goes and he buys the tefillin in 1 minute. But if you're going to do the same thing for tefillin, for Sfarim, it's not that common Sfarim. You can't find Sfarim. So therefore, it's going to be much more difficult for him to find it. So therefore, it doesn't work by Sfarim. It only works by tefillin. Tan Rabbanan, we learned in the Braita. Hashoel Sefer Torah mechavero. If you're going to borrow a Sefer Torah from his friend, Harez lo yashilenu la'acher. You're not allowed to lend it to another person. Potcho, right? If you want, you could open up the Sefer Torah. You're allowed to read it. But you're not allowed to start learning it from it at the beginning, the first time. And again, nobody else could read with you. But again, then they're going to be pulling it towards them. If they're going to be mafkid a Sefer Torah by his friend, the same thing. Every 12 months he comes and he rolls it from the beginning to the end. Right? If he wants to open it up and start reading it, if it's going to be that from the beginning he started opening up and it's going to be for it, meaning to watch over the Sefer Torah, it's going to be asur. Right? Sumchus Omar Chadash, Sumchus comes and he says, if it's going to be a Sefer Torah which is new, that becomes ruined very, very quickly, so therefore you have to do it every single 30 days. If it's going to be an old one, it's going to be every single 12 months. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov says, it's always going to be every single 12 months. Okay? Fine. Amar Mor. Mor says, Hashoel Sefer Torah mechavero, hareze lo yashilenu leacher. If you're going to borrow a Sefer Torah from your friend, you shouldn't lend it to somebody else. My idea Sefer Torah, why do you say Sefer Torah? If you call me Nami, anything. Meaning if I lend you something, you're not allowed to just continue lending it out. I lent you something. This, a phone, you can't just come and continue lending it. What's going on? Ta'amar Rabbi Shimon Lakish, says Rabbi Shimon Lakish, right? Kan Shana Rabbi, here Rabbi taught the set of the Mishnayot that Ena Shoel Rashai Lashil, Vena Socher Rashai Laskir. Right? The borrower is not allowed to lend out, to continue lending out, and the renter is not allowed to continue renting it out. Meaning you cannot sublease unless it's written. You know what I mean? You cannot just continue the ball. So answers the Gemara, the Chidush is by a Sefer Torah. Sefer Torah it's tzrichale. Why? I would have thought to say nichale leinish to have a mitzvah b'mamune. A person you would say, no, I'm sure you wanted that people should do mitzvah with your money. Kamash Malan comes teach you that we don't do that. Meaning, some people, you know how it is, that all of a sudden, no, I was sure that you would be happy with it. You understand? I'm sure about it. Well, you're sure. Ask. And therefore, the same thing. Kamash Malan comes to teach you, don't start saying, the guy wants you to do money with his mitzvot. You do money on your own account. You do mitzvot on your own account, not on my account. Okay, and therefore, you cannot use that svara. Okay, 2 dots. Potcho vekorebo. We said you open up the Sefer Torah and you read it. Shita, obviously. Right? Why did you borrow a Sefer Torah if you're not going to read it? You borrow a Sefer Torah, you're not going to read it? What are you borrowing a Sefer Torah then? So says the Gemara, the Seifa, he needed it for the Seifa. But you're not allowed to learn from it in a new place. Why? Because if you're going to learn from it in a new place, so then it's going to become problematic, because then if you're going to leave it in such a long time, right? Remember, when you're learning from it from the first time, so what happens is you need to open for a very long time in order to come and in order to learn from it. So it's going to ruin the book. The same thing if you're going to be mafki the Sefer Torah by your friend, golelo kol 12 chodesh. You're going to be golel et ze every single 12 months. You could open it up and read. Maya vita gabe. Was it going to be there for 12 months? What's going on over here, right? At the end of the day, right? Why is the Sefer Torah still by you? The 2, and furthermore, im bishvil petacho asur. If you're going to tell me now that you're going to open it up, it's going to be asur. V'amarta, you said that you're allowed to open it up. So says Gemara, that's what it means. Say. Im keshu golelo potcho vekorebo mutar, aval im bishvilo petacho asur, which means like this. We just said that you're allowed to come and roll it once every 12 months. So if while you're rolling at derech agav, the rolling, you're going to open it up and you're going to read it, meaning while you're rolling, so then that's going to be mutar. But if you come and you want to read it, so now you open it up to read it, even if you're going to be doing the gelilah, it's still going to be asur. Okay, the continuation of the Braita. Sumchus comes and he says, if it's a Sefer Torah Chadash, it's every 30 days. Yashan, it's going to be 12 months. Because basically at the beginning, you need it to air out. So therefore it becomes quickly ruined, right, from the beginning. So therefore, like, it takes time until it becomes older. So it says, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov says, whether it's going to be Chadash or Yashan, it's always going to be 12 months. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov hayinu Tanakama. He says, 1 second. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov is the same as the Tanakama then. Because if Sumchus was the one that differentiated between Yashan and Chadash, that means Tanakama didn't differentiate. Which means that when Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov comes and he says that no, that it's the same thing, so then that's like Tanakama. And so the Gemara, you're right. Ela Eima, but rather you have to say, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov says, Echadze ve'echadze is 30 days, which means the opposite of Tanakama. Tanakama said it's once every 12 months. Sumchus said if it's new, it's 30 days, and if it's old, it's 12 months. Comes Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov and says, no, all of them is always 30 days. Okay, so he's arguing on the Tanakama. Okay, next. You're not supposed to learn from the beginning, right, in the book. So he says, nobody else should read with you. Or meaning we have a contradiction, which means that if you find a sefer, you shouldn't read a parasha and then learn it again. Yishne is like to shoneh, is to learn it a second time. Okay, don't read a parasha, and then you do the targum. Okay, never open it more than 3 dapin in one shot, right? Because again, that's the way it was made in such a way that if you're going to open it up, right, in such a big way, it's not going to be good. Okay, you should know that sometimes the people come and they try to show off, so they open up the Sefer Torah much more. It's not good. You understand? It's not you understand? It's that's haughtiness for which is against what you're supposed to be doing. It should be three dapim. Now, if it's difficult to do it, right? So therefore, you're right. So then it does exist that you could do it a little bit more or a little bit less in order to make it easier for you to do the Maria Ketav. But not, we're talking about the guy wants to show off, so he's opening up 20. You understand? No. So here, the same thing. Here we're talking about that a person should never open it up more than 3 dapim bevatachat. Okay? You shouldn't have 3 people reading in one krach. Hashnaim korim, but 2 people they can. Now you just told me that you shouldn't have 2 people reading the Sefer Torah because then each one is pulling it towards them and it could tear. Here it's written that 2 people can read it. So Amar Abaye comes and he says, La kashya, it's not a question. Kan binyan echad, kan bishnei inyanim. Here we're talking about 1 inyan and 2 inyanim, which means the Mishnah that says you're not allowed to come and not even 2 people, we're talking about in 1 inyan. So therefore, since the derech is so each one wants to push the sefer towards them. So since each one wants to push the sefer towards them, it could tear the sefer. So therefore, if it's 1 inyan, you're not allowed to. But if it's going to be 2 different inyanim, so fine, I'm reading over here, you're reading over there. I'm not going to push it towards me And you're not going to, because I'm reading here, you're reading here, it's fine. Okay? Fine. 2 dots. Matzah kesut. Yeah, if you come, right? If you come and you find a clothing. Menara echad lishoshim yom. So, if you found the clothing, what do we say? You're going to shake it out once every 30 days, so it doesn't get moldy and all the other things like that. So, says the Gemara, Lemimra diniur ma'alele. Are you going to tell me that shaking is good for it? Rabbi Yochanan says, Mish yesh lo garde uman. If somebody has an oreg begadim, which is a mumche, like a weaver, which is mumche, like a tailor, betoch beto in his house, yenerek suto bechol yom. You should do it every single day, right? Which means, right, that basically that it's going to get ruined very, very quickly. So therefore, but since you have a tailor, what do you care? Because if you have a tailor in your house, what do you care? So shake it every single day. That's it. So here, why are you telling me that shaking the clothing is good? Smashma shaking the clothing is bad. Yeah? So Amri, so they said, Bechol Yom Kasher, you're right. Every single day, it's not good. And that was what Rabbi Yochanan said. If it's every single day, it's not good, but you don't care because you have a weaver in your house. But Echad Shoshim Yom, it's good. Meaning, too much of something is never good. Remember that. But once in a while, it's always going to be good. So the same thing, once every 30 days, it's going to be good for the clothing. That's the first answer. Second answer, Ibaitema. La Kashya, it's not a question. Habechada bitrei. Our Mishnah is talking about one person shaking the clothing. And therefore, one person shaking the clothing, there's no problem. It's actually good for it. But Rabbi Yochanan was talking about 2 people shaking the clothing. When 2 people grab the 2 different sides of the clothing and then they come and they start to stretch it out too much, that is actually bad for it. So that's the second answer, which means that if it's one person, it's good. 2 people shaking it, it's bad. Third answer, it's not a question. Habida habechutra. The one that says, the Mishnah that says that actually you're shaking it is going to be good. We're talking about you're shaking it with your hands. And therefore it's not going to ruin the clothing. It's actually shomer the clothing. But when Rabbi Yochanan comes and he says that it's not good the shaking, he's talking about bemakel. He's talking about that you're shaking it out with a stick, meaning you're hitting it with a stick, and therefore that could actually tear it, and therefore it's actually not going to be good. Okay, the fourth answer, right? If you want, you could answer. A fourth answer. La kashya, not a question. Ha bede amra, veha bede kitna. Right? What does that mean? Rabbi Yochanan was talking about in the case of a beget semer. So therefore, when Rabbi Yochanan, here is the first time that we're actually, right, he says, what are we talking about? He comes and he says, right, the Rabbi Yochanan was talking about semer, and therefore semer, when you come in, if it's wool and you're going to come and start shaking it, it could actually tear. So therefore, since it could tear, it's not going to be good. However, the habbe, the kitna, here we're talking about pishtan, right, the kutna, the pishtan, and therefore it's not going to tear, right, very easily. Okay? Fine. Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan comes and he says, Kasa de charashin, vela kasa de poshrin. When we're talking about the entire concept of derech eretz, right, we're trying to find out how to do things. Rabbi Yochanan comes and he says like this: it's better a person that should drink, right, a cup made out of mechashafim, right, which means that's what he says, kasa de charashin. Right, we're talking about people that do witchcraft and sorcery and everything, and don't drink a water which is lukewarm, which is tepid, right? Which is meaning posher. It's not cold and it's not hot, right? Why? Because that's not good for the body, and it's actually more sakana than sakana kshafim. Meaning, if a person has a choice of drinking lukewarm water, right, instead of mechashafim, it's better to drink mechashafim from lukewarm. I'm finishing, and then we could continue. Velo amran, but we didn't say this. Ela bekli matachot. We're talking about if it's only going to be in a kli matechet. What does it mean, kli matechet? Kli matechet means, right, in a metal utensil. Aval bekli cheres. Yeah, he comes and he says bekli cheres let lamba. Right, there's not going to be any problem. Meaning that if it's going to be in a kli cheres, you could drink lukewarm. Lukewarm is the body temperature, which is 37 degrees. Okay, but kli matachot, right? Ukli matachot nami lo amran, and kli matachot also they didn't say it. Ela delot tzvitz. That's if it wasn't completely boiling. Aval tzvitz. But if it's going to be the water that was already boiled completely and then became poshrim lelamba, meaning that's by the way what you do nowadays. The majority of people, if you want to get rid of bacteria and all the, what do? You boil it. Once you boil it, even if it's going to go back down to the temperature of lukewarm, there's not going to be a problem. Velo amran, and also we didn't say this. Ela de lo shada betzivaya. If you didn't actually put inside of it any type of asabim or tavlinim or besamim and things like that. But if you did put that lelamba, there's no problem. again, with all these things, right? We're not going to care about all these things, so there's not going to be a problem. Ve'amar Rabbi Yochanan, says Rabbi Yochanan, Mi sheniach lo aviv ma'ot arbeh. If a person comes and his father left him a lot of money as Yerusha, and he wants to actually get rid of it, Yilbash bigdei pishtan, right? Use linen clothing. Yishtamesh bekli zichuchit. Use glass utensils. V'yiskor poalim, right? And get workers. Val yeshev amihen. But don't pay attention to them. That's, by the way, this is an incredible musar. What does that mean? Don't pay attention. Meaning, you just get workers, but you're not on top of them. You have to understand. If you have any type of a worker and you're not going to be on top of him, they do not do the work. Gemara mefureshet. You want to waste your money. Get a worker and don't be on top of him. Right? Why? Because if you're not going to be on top of him, Kaddish, he's going to... Yeah, that's the way it is. So the Gemara is going to explain each one of these things. We're going to use Bigdei Pishtan, Pekotana Romita. We're talking about Bigdei Pishtan, right, from Rome, which is very, very expensive, but they wear out very, very quickly. Okay, what are we talking about? You should use glass utensils. Bezugita chivarta. We're talking about zichuchit levana, which is basically, again, very, very expensive glass. And again, they could break very easily. Right? And we're talking about you should get workers and you're not going to be with them. Targuma, we actually explained this, right? Betore tenefish psidayu. With poalim, that they come and they're taking the shvarim, the ox, right, of the balabait. And what happens is they plow, right, and they do betzida. And what happens is there's a hefsem merubeh if you're not going to come and you're not going to pay attention to them, which means that since they don't care the money of the balabait, so therefore, in order to do it, sometimes they'll come, they'll go over the grapes, they'll go over they don't really care. I'm doing my job. But you have to be careful, so you have to be on top of them. So if you're not going to be on top of them, you're actually throwing away your money.